Seven Morning Star. We're going to pick up on Mardiga Presents.
He came to serve sinners. When Jesus came to town, all the working folks around believed what he did say. But the bunkers and the preachers, they nailed him on the cross and they laid Jesus Christ in his grave. In a discussion with life and more complicated but not dissimilar assessment of Jesus' message and its ramifications, if he was just talking about a nice idea, I don't think peasants would have been interested, and I don't think the Romans would have been excited. I don't think that he would have got himself crucified. So, I do presume that he both said and did something. He crossed over the line from talk to action. I think what he was doing was creating a movement of empowerment for the peasants, telling them that this is what you must do. You must take your lives back into your own hands. You must learn to heal one another. I think healing is crucial for me to understand why peasants are listening to Jesus. He demands that they share their food together, which might not seem much to us, but might seem much to an impoverished peasant who just lost his land. Jesus declares that this is what the kingdom of God is like: open healing and open eating together. An attempt to rebuild the peasant community from the grassroots upward, and the statement is that they are all empowered to do it. Jesus doesn't settle in one place and send out messengers to bring everyone back to him. He sends people out to dress like him and act like him and to preach the kingdom of God. He doesn't have a monopoly on it. This is why I use the word empowerment rather than domination. I'm not even keen to the word disciples because in Greek it means student of a teacher. And so the analogy is always Master Jesus and his students. I would prefer to talk about Jesus' companions because this is what the message is, as I understand it. I do not have a monopoly of the kingdom of God. Go and do likewise. The people whom Jesus sent are not sent to heal and teach just like him. Jesus, the sage, must come second, and the healer has to come first. Because of your dealing with the peasants, you're dealing with the body. Peasants begin with their bodies. They want to know what the kingdom of God does for my body. What does it do for the bread and death? To pick up two things mentioned in the Our Father, what does it do with the daily bread? And what does it do about the forgiveness of debts, which are the two ancient ghosts that haunts the peasant's imagination? Certainly, Jesus would find a welcoming audience among the very poor when he counseled them on how they might help themselves and each other in this hard life. Counseled them and then proceeded, as Gandhi rightly observed, to lead by example. It's hard not to see the spiritual dimensions of what he said and did when you realize he was not trying to accumulate anything for himself. He never saved up for us rainy days. He lived entirely out of God's providence, and he said that others who wanted to be around him should do the same. But it was all about better days on earth. It could not possibly have been the message concerning God's providence had another crucial and thoroughly spiritual component, but succinctly by Jesus in Matthew's Gospel, "For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" These were all these fine words and compelling thoughts in whatever their original interaction and eloquence. Son, who were these companions? How did Jesus find them? The biblical Gospels sketch a biographical narrative, but it must be pieced together. As mentioned earlier, Luke and Matthew recorded the nativity in their Gospels. Mark and John, by contrast, did not. They begin instead with John the Baptist, who himself was not the light. The Gospel of John tells us, "But he was sent to bear witness of the light." John the Baptist was an itinerant preacher, perhaps related to Jesus' family, who may have been influenced by the ascetic Essene sect, which anticipated imminent apocalypse and prepared for it by stressing baptism. John took pains to emphasize to his growing legion of followers, but he was not the preordained Messiah, and that someone would follow him who was greater by far. He baptized Jesus in the river of Jordan, perhaps around 26 AD, and was short thereafter arrested for his public ministry, and he was beheaded. Jesus is, in the New Testament, the one foretold by John. After his baptism, he gained a spiritual power, which was fortuitous for his next, was tempted by the devil, who showed him the kingdom to come. But Jesus resisted and was now ready to slate his own evangelical mission in Galilee. He lectured in synagogues. According to Luke, Jesus' hometown congregate in Nazareth rejected him, and he took his preaching to villages on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. There, he began building a team of disciples, starting with the two pairs of brothers all fishermen, Peter and Andrew, John and James, I will make you fisher of men. Jesus' flock was becoming well known in the region, and since there was some talk of him being the one presaged by John the Baptist, there was a growing urgency for him to prove himself, not least to his lieutenants. One day in Cana, a village north of Nazareth, Jesus and his mother were attending a wedding when the wine ran out. Many brought the news to Jesus. Jesus ordered 6 water pots of stone filled with water. He promptly turned the liquid into wine, and in a later episode at Cana, Jesus heard about a dying boy and healed him. He was proving his divinity. Despite the early rejection in Nazareth, he was still working near home. He was yet a local movement. The Sea of Galilee, 16 miles east of Nazareth, is not a sea at all, but a 64 square miles lake in the depression of the Jordan River. In fact, at more than 600 feet below sea level, it is the lowest freshwater lake in the world. In Jesus' day, it supported vibrant cities, Capernaum and Bethsaida, which had more than 50,000 residents, as well as many smaller fishing villages. This is the place where Jesus' mission was nurtured. 5 of the eventual 12 of his disciples were from town along the shore, and Mary Magdalene came from a Galilean village as well. The great majority of his recorded miracles were performed by or on the sea. As said, it was here that he turned water into wine. Here, he turned 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes into a small meal for Mary. Here, he calmed the waters. He even walked upon them. He preached here and often effectively. He used a fishing net to show what judgment day would be like when all mankind would be gathered up nearby. He delivered to the multitudes the Sermon on the Mount, an ethical lesson for all ages. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Eventually, as Jesus gained more and more followers and notoriety, word spread beyond Galilee that he had performed these miracles, fed a multitude with a meager ration, healed the sick. In the New Testament, these stories are not presented for their supernatural effect, but rather to forward a moral point or to instill faith. In their day, they certainly rallied Jesus' disciples, who started whispering, "He is the one." Such view spread sotto voce, made life more dangerous for all concerned. Today, the village of Bethany, of the outskirts of Jerusalem, is known by the Arabic name El Azariah, meaning place of Lazarus. The town church of Lazarus is also named for Jesus' dear friend. Jesus, with his mission spreading and encroaching upon Jerusalem from Galilee, visited Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha, several times in their house in Bethany. In fact, Bethany is sometimes referred to as Jesus' Judean home somewhere. At one point, the sisters informed Jesus, "Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick." Jesus quickly determined to go and help Lazarus. His disciples were concerned and warned against the trip, as Jesus' growing ministry has been making fresh enemies. "Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again?" Jesus insisted, "Our friend Lazarus slept, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep." He did go, and he did raise the dead Lazarus and restore him to life. He did, even if only metamorphically. I do not believe anyone has ever been brought out of the tomb who was dead. So the big question for me, when I read the story of Lazarus, why on earth are people telling this story? The only explanation that makes sense to me is that, as far as these people were concerned, Jesus was bringing the dead back to life. But Jesus, as the gospel tells us, did not do himself much good with the extraordinary act. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went their way to the Pharisee and told them what things Jesus has done. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans will come, take away both our place and nation. Things were getting hot for Jesus, and they were getting hottest wherever. He ventured near Jerusalem, installed in that city by this time with the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. He was hearing the news, as were the Jewish prelates, and perhaps started to pay attention. In John's Gospel, Jews traveled to Jerusalem at least 5 different times during his career. Before the final journey, something extraordinary happened in the center of Galilee. On a mountain just outside the city of Capernaum, Jesus has drawn aside 3 of the disciples and asked them to accompany him to the mountaintop, which is traditionally thought to be Mount Tabor. There they prayed. As they did so, Jesus was transformed. Transfigured is the word the Bible uses to describe what occurred. He glowed and then was visited by Moses and Elijah, who talked to him. Then there came a cloud, and from the cloud a voice, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." And then it was over. The men descended, and Jesus asked his friend to keep what he had seen secret until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. What did the transfiguration of Jesus mean? What does it mean today? Certainly, it was yet another miracle that should have alleviated any lingering doubts about Jesus' divinity that Peter, James, and John might have harbored. But in the Luke's Gospel, there is one thing more. Jesus wrote what Moses and Elijah spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem. This words passage, the passion of Jesus that lay ahead in the hot, distant future. They also clearly imply that this man was on a holy mission, an assignment that would need to be accomplished. He came and was sent to save sinners. Another of Jesus' most well-known miracles occurred outside Jericho, also not far from Jerusalem. En route to the Judean capital, Passover was approaching, this time to meet his ultimate faith. Jesus was traveling with his disciples, either paused on his way into the city to heal a blind man by side of the road, according to the Gospel of Luke. Healed the man upon exiting the city, says Mark, or healed not one, but two beggars, according to Matthew. Only in Mark is this blind man given name Bartimaeus. The difference are insignificant, as the moral of these three telling is the same, because a blind man believed in Jesus, because he considered Jesus divine. He was rewarded by the Son of God as Jesus, but put it eloquently in Mark. Thy faith hath made the whole. In that gospel account, Jesus finally told the man to go thy way, but significantly. The man immediately fell in with Jesus' followers and proceeded with them on the Jerusalem road. How large was in Jesus' legion when it entered the great city in a week before the feast that is unspecified. But clearly it was not just Jesus and the 12 disciples. And clearly this troop would have caused an immediate stir. In all of the gospel, the action begins to speed up considerably at this point. The dramatic events of the Passion of Christ represent a crescendo like no other. Your servant, Mayarchi Uy Buraga.
DJ